Hi, I'm Dr. Katie McGettigan and I'm a lecturer in American Literature at Royal Holloway, University of London, and today I'm going to be talking to you about John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the role of ecology and the environment in The Grapes of Wrath. So The Grapes of Wrath is, on the one hand, a story about human tragedy. A story about what happens when people are exploited, when they're not paid fairly for their labour, when the values of companies and the money that company makes is more important than the people who farm land, who create food. What happens when people are displaced from their homes, and the ways in which communities can perhaps come together to fight these tragedies. But on the other hand, it's also a story about an environmental disaster. So the Dust Bowl, the big environmental catastrophe in which drought essentially kind of ripped the surface off the land in large swathes of the American West, that's an environmental catastrophe as well. The environment is destroyed. The natural habitats in which animals can live, in which food can grow, all of that is also affected, as well as humans, by the Dust Bowl. Now, Steinbeck was very interested in ecology and the environment. He lives in California on the coast when he's writing The Grapes of Wrath, and he has a strong friendship with a man called Ed Ricketts, who is a marine biologist, who in fact was one of the men who really founded the field of marine biology. And in one of Steinbeck's later novels, Cannery Row, he actually makes Ricketts a character, and that novel, more than The Grapes of Wrath, is very explicitly about ecology. And now ecologists are interested in not just individual species of animals or plants, but the way in which habitats are kind of mutually interdependent, the way in which the life of one thing relies on the life of another. And I think we can see that interest in environment, in habitat, and in mutual dependency in The Grapes of Wrath. So in some of the inter-chapters, so the ones that don't follow the narrative of the Jodes, the short ones that tend to come in between, the narrative is pressed away from the human and sometimes focuses on the environment, not just as a kind of setting for human events that are taking place, but as a subject in and of itself. And so in those chapters, we see the environment having its own agency. So in chapter 11, after the Jodes and their neighbours have left their home in Oklahoma, what happens is that trees and plants begin to grow over the ruins of their houses. So nature reclaims from the human in the wake of this disaster. The same chapter, chapter 11, also questions the extent to which we can ever know nature. So in chapter 11, Steinbeck says, "The land is so much more than its analysis. There seems to be something mysterious in nature that perhaps as humans we can't fully understand, but we should nevertheless respect." There are other interchapters in which Steinbeck decenters the perspective of the human altogether. So in particular, I'm thinking about chapter 3, right at the start of the book, in which the narrative is focalised through the perspective of a turtle. So we see this turtle striving to climb up to the road, we see him trying to cross, he's hit by a car, he's flipped onto his back, and then he gets up again. There are two competing ways, I think, of reading this chapter. One is to read it symbolically. So we could see the turtle as a representation of the Jode family. Like the Jodes, the turtle is forced to confront lots of different struggles. It's knocked down by the power of something larger than itself, but nevertheless it seems to have an enduring strength that gets it through these times of trial. But on the other hand, I think considering Steinbeck's interest in ecology and the environment, we might want to think about what it would mean to read that chapter as actually being about and from the perspective of a turtle. Is Steinbeck, in focalising that chapter through the turtle, trying to remind us that humans aren't the only thing that's alive on the planet, that humans aren't necessarily at the centre of everything, that there are other perspectives in this world other than ours? Is he trying to suggest that humans perhaps shouldn't always be central to our thinking, that we have to think about the wider environment? And so I think when we consider the images of connectivity towards the end of The Grapes of Wrath, Tom Joad's speech about the fact that he will be everywhere, he will be in amongst all these communities of people. When we think about that moment of connectivity when Rosa Sharon feeds the starving man from her breast, We also maybe have to think about connectivity in the novel as being more than human, as a connection both between humans and the non-human world of plants and animals, but also connections within nature that perhaps exclude the human altogether.